that's where I saw the opportunity to come in with a cheeky offer. People don't sell assets, they sell liabilities. I wouldn't go the slum landlord route and try and fit 10 people in a 2-bedroom apartment. On average, this building generates 50,000 Rand in rental income. So the reason why I invest in these areas, albeit a little bit risky, is because your yield is phenomenal. You have to be able to see a liability that can be turned into an asset, and that's where your success lies. So today we're going to look at a case study of a building called Napier Court. It's a 10-unit building, quite a big one. It's in an area called Haddon, which is in the old south of Johannesburg. I like to think of it as a lower risk, more suburban type area. You know, if you compare to Rosettenville, Turffontein, you know, those are areas that have a lot more crime, delinquent behavior. Haddon has a few more families and it's a bit more suburban in its nature. It's in close proximity to a very well sought after high school called Forest High, which again means that it's attracting a lot of families. Now, I personally like to rent to families as opposed to couples because families tend to look after the units a little bit better. You know, they tend to stay for longer as well because they want to give their kids some semblance of stability. So they want to stay for a couple of years, sometimes for 5, 10, 15 years. The one tenant that lives in this building has been there for 44 years. And it's nice to have a tenant that stays for long because the cost of acquiring a new tenant is a lot more expensive than the cost of maintaining a tenant. And finally, they cause less chaos. There's a lot less delinquent behavior, parties and drugs when families are involved as opposed to individuals or couples. The reason you want to invest in these kind of areas, your lower income segment, is because your yield is fantastic. So if you're investing in your more suburban, affluent areas like Fourways, Besonia, Greenpoint, your rental yield will be less than 10%, meaning that your rent's not even going to cover your bond, let alone your rates and taxes, water, electricity, all of that stuff. So the reason why I invest in these areas, albeit a little bit risky, is because your yield is phenomenal. You can buy a unit for 250 to 300,000 and you're getting 5,000 plus rent. So you've got enough rent to cover your bond, your rates and taxes, and even a provision for bad debts, for vacancies, for maintenance, or for your managing agent. So from a financial perspective, it makes a lot of sense. So we're here now in Jocham Street, and that's where this building is located, on the corner of Jocham and Napier. So let's go and have a look at the building in a bit more detail. I found this property on Property 24, and while I was looking through it, I saw that the agent who was selling this property is an agent I've dealt with in the past. So I gave him a quick call to find out what the motivation of the owner was. I've learned early on that people don't sell assets, they sell liabilities. The thing is, you have to be able to see a liability that can be turned into an asset, and that's where your success lies. Now, this building behind me was a liability, and the reason was because it was a delinquent landlord. He just didn't look after the building, he didn't look after his tenants, he didn't pay his expenses and his bills. He didn't have a good letting agent in place, he didn't vet his tenants, delinquent tenants were allowed to run rampant, and he didn't pay his COJ accounts. When we were doing our due diligence, we saw that he had over 200,000 in outstanding bills from the city of Johannesburg. I mean, that's just crazy. Now, is this a liability? Yes, it's because it was being mismanaged. So that's where I saw the opportunity to come in with a cheeky offer. We bought this building for 2.8 million, meaning each unit we bought for 280,000. And we were able to turn it around from a liability into an asset. How do we do that? Well, putting in prepaid meters so that we didn't have that issue of the tenant not paying on time and having to recover from them. Putting in a really good letting agent, getting rid of the bad tenants, the delinquent tenants, and replacing them with good, well-vetted tenants. On average, this building generates 50,000 Rand in rental income, giving a gross yield of 21.4%. There's currently one vacancy, and that's the unit we're going to go and see today, so let's go in. So all of the units look really similar. They're all designed very similarly, and they're finished in the same way. Remember, you're not really looking for lavish luxury or, you know, the best finishings. You're looking for what's practical and what's durable. So here's the first room. This is a lounge. Sometimes it's used as a bedroom. It depends how the family wants to structure it. And then you've got here on the outside, this door leads into a balcony. Oftentimes what you'll see in this lower income areas is that they'll close off the balcony so that they can put an extra bed or another unit in there. I'm not always a big fan of putting in as many people as I can into a property because then you get more delinquent behavior. You've got higher maintenance costs. So, if it's a 2-bedroom, you're putting in a family or maybe 2 couples. If it's a 3-bedroom, you can maybe put 3 couples or a family and an extra person. I wouldn't go the slum landlord route and try and fit 10 people in a 2-bedroom apartment. Next, we have the kitchen. And I always spend a little bit of extra time in the kitchen because this is a lot of where your maintenance is going to come from. As you can see with this building, we've got some wooden cabinets and some wooden shelves. Wood is not ideal because it tends to erode and is not as durable. So what I'll do is I'll leave the cabinets as they are, but once a new tenant comes in or once there's a lot of renovation required, I'd rather put a concrete slab here. Something that's a bit more durable. It's not as pretty to look at, but it's going to reduce your maintenance. You'll also often see your DB board is in the kitchen. I always spend a bit of time looking at the DB board because if it's outdated and old, you're probably looking at quite a sizable electrical bill. And then you also want to see the prepaid meters. Prepaid meters are critical because if you don't have this, what happens is your tenant will use electricity and at the end of the month, they'll get a bill and then you have to try and recover it from them. Whereas this prepaid solution means that they have to pay to play, meaning you don't have to chase them for money. And then we've got the sink and some cupboard space. I like this because there's this tin top. You don't want too much wood there because then you're going to get mold and you're going to get that decay. So this tin does protect it a little bit. And again, once the kitchen needs a proper renovation, I'm going to replace this wood with concrete. Sometimes you can add a stove. I've found that when you put a stove in, your tenants are quite happy. Otherwise, they have to put their own stove in, but make sure it's portable so that it's easy to move. Now we're getting over to the actual bedrooms. We've seen the lounge, we've seen the kitchen. Here's bedroom number 1. And you can see it's quite spacious. This is going to be quite easy for a queen size bed plus a built-in cupboard, maybe a table or a makeup stand. So it's spacious. This is what your kind of parents or your family would want to live in. Here we've got that outside area, which is got the gated fence, and this is where people often they'll close it off and they can fit a single bed in. Again, I wouldn't recommend it unless you've got a large family and you've done some good vetting and you trust them, but you don't really want to be overpopulating the units. Here we've got the second bedroom. And this bedroom is a little bit smaller, so this would likely be the kids' bedroom or the aunt or the uncle or the cousin, whoever's staying with them. But, still big enough that you can put a nice single bed in and a built-in cupboard. As long as your tenants have those, basic things, they should be happy. And then let's end off with the bathroom. So kitchen and bathroom tend to be where I spend most of my time because that's where the largest amount of your renovation is going to come from. Your bedrooms, okay, maybe you have to retile or repaint, you have to fix a couple of windows, but the bulk of your expensive renovations are going to come in your bathroom and in your kitchen. In your bathroom, if you have to be changing the bathtub or fixing the toilet or changing the plumbing, that tends to be an expensive cost. So within this bathroom, it's really simple. There's a toilet, a basin, and a bathtub. What's nice in this specific unit is that the geysers are all outside. Oftentimes you'll see in these kind of low income housings, you'll see the geyser in the bathroom or in the kitchen and it's in plain sight. The issue with that is that if it's not at a low enough level, it's not going to be compliant with the building inspector, which means you're not going to get your zoning certificate. When it's outside the building, you don't have that issue. Now that we've seen this unit, let's go and look at the general cosmetics of this building. So we've got some good security measures in place, key card to keep people, for the tenants to use to come in. There's obviously the post office situation happening here. And then we've got the second floor and we've got the ground floor. So on the ground floor, we've got 5 units. On the top floor, we've got another 5 units. Here you can see where the meter readings happen. So when council comes and does their readings, this is where they'll come in to look at what the usage has been and essentially what our charge is going to be. A nice value proposition on this building as well is that we've got secure parking. Now that's not always needed in your low cost housing situation because not all the tenants have cars, but if your tenant does have a car, that's a good sign. It probably means that they have a stable job if they're able to afford a car. So I like to look at buildings that have parking available because I think you attract a higher caliber tenant when you have that kind of offering. As the landlord, my responsibilities are to maintain everything outside the building, the gardening, the walls, the outside windows, the roof. The tenant is responsible for the inside of the unit. So I have to provide the tenant with a good product, and then we do an inspection report to say this is what the condition of the unit is prior to the tenant moving in. And then when the tenant leaves, we look at that inspection report, we look at the current condition, and if there's a big discrepancy, they've punched holes in the wall or they've broken a window, then we can keep their deposits as capital to then fix the unit up. My name is Lawrence Bull. I'm a property investor, author, and coach. And over the last decade, I have built a positive cash flow portfolio in the affordable housing sector in South Africa. I partner with individuals who have some spare capital and want to have exposure into the property sector, into this very lucrative industry. Through this partnership, you get to leverage my skills, my experience, my network. I go out and find the deal, negotiate it, transfer, and do all the management. If this sounds interesting to you, click the link below.